Brad Williams, Frugal Finance, understanding Medicaid's asset transfer rules and how they impact long-term care eligibility. Medicaid can delay or deny coverage for long-term care if it determines that you have transferred assets within the last 5 years prior to applying for benefits. This look-back period is in place to prevent individuals from giving away assets in an attempt to qualify for Medicaid coverage. Medicaid has strict rules about asset limits, which can affect your eligibility for coverage of nursing home care, home and community-based services, and other long-term care options. Can I transfer my property and qualify for Medicaid? Some individuals anticipating the need for long-term care may try to safeguard their assets by transferring them to family members, such as their children. The intent is often to protect the family's home or savings from being spent down on long-term care costs. However, Medicaid's rules have become stricter in recent years, requiring careful planning to ensure assets are not penalized when determining Medicaid's eligibility. Medicaid is considered a payer of last resort, meaning it will only cover long-term care costs after all other financial resources have been exhausted. If you transfer assets to others in an attempt to reduce your countable assets, Medicaid may impose a penalty period, making you ineligible for long-term care coverage for a set duration. How do Medicaid's transfer rules work? During the look-back period, which spans 5 years before your Medicaid application, any assets that are given away or sold for less than their fair market value will count as gifts and can result in a penalty. The penalty period begins on the date you apply for Medicaid or when you enter a nursing home, whichever is later. The length of the penalty is determined by the value of the assets transferred. For example, if you gave $50,000 to a family member and the average monthly cost of nursing home care in your area is $10,000, Medicaid could calculate a 5-month penalty period. The more you transfer, the longer the penalty period. This penalty applies to all assets transferred by you or your spouse, even if the transfer was made to a family member or caregiver. For instance, if you sell an asset like a car or property for less than its market value, Medicaid will treat the difference as a gift. The impact of changes to Medicaid's rules. Previously, Medicaid had a 3-year look-back period, and penalties would begin from the date the transfer was made. Additionally, the penalty period was rounded down. If the calculation suggested a 1.83-month penalty, it would be rounded down to 1 month. This no longer happens under the updated rules, meaning if the penalty period is calculated at 1.83 months, it will be enforced as such, and even small transfers could result in longer periods of ineligibility. Asset limits and exceptions. Most states have strict asset limits for Medicaid eligibility, which is typically around $2,000 for individuals. However, some states, such as New York or Illinois, have higher thresholds, while others, like Connecticut, may have a lower limit. It is important to check with your local Medicaid office for specific information on asset limits in your area. In 2024, California introduced a significant change by eliminating the asset limit for Medi-Cal recipients needing long-term care. Instead, the state now uses a 30-month look-back period, which will gradually be phased out by 2026. While Medicaid does consider most of a couple's combined assets, some assets are exempt from being counted. For example, one car, household belongings, a small life insurance policy, burial plots, and prepaid funeral plans are generally not considered in Medicaid's asset assessments. Your primary residence may also be exempt as long as you or your spouse intend to return to the home or if a minor or disabled child lives there. In some states, the home's equity may be disregarded up to a certain limit, which can vary depending on the region's cost of living. Exemptions from Medicaid's transfer rules. Medicaid does allow some transfers without imposing a penalty. These exceptions include transfer to a spouse. You can transfer assets to your spouse without triggering a penalty period. Transfer to minor or disabled children. Medicaid doesn't penalize transfers to children who are either minors or disabled. Transfers to a sibling who lives with you. If you transfer your home to a sibling who has lived with you for at least a year before your Medicaid application, it may not trigger a penalty. Transfer for long-term care needs. If you give your home to a child who lived with you for at least 2 years and provided care so you could stay at home, this may be exempt. What to do if Medicaid imposes a penalty period. If Medicaid imposes an ineligibility period due to asset transfers, there are steps you can take to contest it. Often, this will require the help of an elder law attorney who can review the details of your case and help recover assets that were transferred improperly. In some instances, you may be able to request a waiver of the penalty if it creates significant hardship, such as preventing you from paying for basic living expenses. If you've been denied Medicaid coverage or your eligibility is affected by penalty, consulting with an attorney or Medicaid planner is essential. It can guide you on whether an appeal is possible and whether you may be able to prove that the transfer was made in good faith and with no intention of circumventing Medicaid's rules. Conclusion? While it may seem like a good idea to transfer assets in preparation for Medicaid coverage, doing so without careful planning can lead to serious consequences, including extended periods of ineligibility for long-term care services. If you're considering transferring assets to qualify for Medicaid, it's crucial to consult with a qualified attorney or financial planner to ensure that you're in compliance with Medicaid's rules and to avoid unexpected penalties. Comment if you're an expert in this area or you have questions as it relates to understanding Medicaid's asset transfer rules. Brad Williams, Frugal Finance. Thanks for watching. Hope that helps. See you soon.